One of the biggest struggles I see most students have in terms of physics problems is where to begin. So anytime we're given a problem, we're always going to follow our given structure for solving. We're always going to annotate the problem first. So really quick, our problem here says an object has a speed of 2 meters per second. 3 seconds later, it is going 8 meters per second. What average acceleration did it experience? So let's try and pick out the important things here. So an object has a speed of 2 meters per second. 2 meters per second, definitely an important key there. 3 seconds later, it is going 8 meters per second. 8 meters per second, also pretty important. And we need to know that it's happening in a time frame of 3 seconds. What average acceleration did it experience? So acceleration is our thing in question. Keep in mind the rest of the problem doesn't really matter once we have all of our key pieces of information identified. We know exactly what's happening. So this problem gives us a very explicit definition that says, hey, we're looking for acceleration. So when I start setting up my plan, I have to pick a formula that involves acceleration. So our only formula that has acceleration in it says that acceleration is equal to the final velocity minus the initial velocity all over the time interval, or the time in question. So once we have our formula chosen, the next thing we want to do is we want to plug everything in. So P is our next step. So we're going to kind of use the same exact formula from up here, and we're going to plug in values that we know. In the scenario in this problem, we don't know what the acceleration is, so we're going to substitute in a variable for acceleration. So let's call acceleration x. We know that the acceleration is equal to the final velocity minus the initial velocity all over the time interval. So in the problem, it said that it's starting at 2 meters per second and it ends at 8 meters per second. So know that 8 meters per second is our final velocity, so we know that's where it ends up. Our initial velocity, or starting velocity, is 2 meters per second, because that's where it begins in the problem. And it's all over our time interval of 3 seconds. Because I've annotated the problem, I have all those pieces of information readily available. The next thing we want to do is we want to solve. So looking at above up here, mathematically the first thing we want to do is clean up anything we can clean up. So our first order of operation should be to do 8 minus 2. So know that x is equal to 8 meters per second minus 2 meters per second, or 6 meters per second. And that's all over our time interval of 3 seconds. So now we're going to simplify that again, so we know 6 divided by 3 is actually 2. And we're finding acceleration, so it should have the units of meters per second squared. So that's how we algebraically set up a problem that we're going to want to solve. You notice I modeled exactly how we're solving problem 1 here, so that you can follow along on your worksheet and making sure that we're doing every single problem in the same format. The thing to notice is on the worksheet, one of the biggest things it says, for each problem below, state if the object is experiencing constant velocity or constant acceleration. That's going to help you determine which formula you want to use as you go about solving. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.